With Robert Redford, Jane Fonda.
Yeah.
It's a great one to see as well. Or just keep it right here, folks, because we're going to talk about information you need to know. Jackie here along with Patrick Albanese, who is our special guest host, filling in for Lou Seipold, who's taking a couple days off. But keeping you informed this morning, that's our purpose right now with Michael Jenkins, who's going to teach us a little bit of this, a little bit of that when it comes to bankruptcy and some questions that people might have when it comes to bankruptcy.
Well, I decided this morning to kind of throw a bunch of things together that I don't really think I've specifically spoken about in previous segments, so we just kind of figured we'll throw them all in there and hope they fit.
Yeah.
So
we will make them fit.
But for me, they're questions that I think about because I had a roommate who is this person who they waited until so many years so they could file bankruptcy again. It's not a lifestyle I encourage or anything like that. I'm sure you can follow that, but there is an amount of time that people can wait or have to wait if this is something they would have to do in their life more than once.
Sure. Some people think you can never file again, but that isn't true, and there is time limits that you have to wait before you can do another Chapter 7 or another Chapter 13. So if you file a Chapter 7, get rid of all your debts, you get another crack at it once 8 years have gone by.
8 years?
8 years.
Okay, I was wrong. I thought it was 7.
People always think it's
You're
7
thinking
years.
Chapter 7, he's 8 years. Well, that's a lot of numbers.
The funny thing is that's what I think people think. Chapter 7 years. It's a good number.
That's true.
But, and it actually, before October 17th of 2005, it was actually 6 years.
Okay.
And then when they changed the law, that was one of the little nuggets that was buried in there. That was probably one of the more impactful things, is now you have to wait 8 years to do another Chapter 7. Now, that doesn't necessarily prevent you from doing a Chapter 13. So if you need some assistance because the wolves are at the door and the lawsuits are flying and the wages are being garnished, you can look at the option of filing a Chapter 13.
While doing a Chapter 7?
Well, no, just doing Chapter 13
doing
because
Chapter 13.
8 years hasn't gone by. So.
Gotcha,
How many years between Chapter 13s?
Well, first of all, if you file, if 6 years have gone by, the old law, and you can't do it now, but you can do Chapter 13, at least you can get some protection from your creditors, set up a payment plan on your debts, at least for the couple of years that you got to wait to then do a Chapter 7 and pay some things back for a while. Now, there is a limit even there. If when you file a Chapter 7, you can discharge debts in a Chapter 13. Whatever debt can't get paid back during the payment plan, but 4 years has to have gone by from when you filed your Chapter 7 to do that 13 and get rid of some of the debt.
Okay.
So if less than 4 years have gone by, you can still be in it and protect yourself from your creditors. You just aren't going to be able to discharge or eliminate any of the debt in that Chapter 13. Now, if you file the Chapter 13 and you're thinking about, oh, I need some help again, there's time limits on what kind of bankruptcies you can file when also. So if you're in a Chapter 13 paying your debts back for 3 years or 5 years, whatever your payment plan was, and you successfully completed it, if you need to file a Chapter 7 sometime because you messed up and you need to get rid of your debts, you would think, well, if you paid part of your debts back for all this time, I should not have to wait. And actually, that's how it used to be before October of 2005. Another one of those buried nuggets. So now you have to have paid back, if you pay back over 70% of your unsecured debt in that Chapter 13, then you have no restrictions. You can file another Chapter 7 only, if a year went by or 2 years, you can do it.
Okay.
But if you didn't, let's say you paid 50 cents on the dollar in that payment program, then you have to wait 6 years to do a Chapter 7. There's a lot of different time frames going on.
There's reasons why we have them call you, because it's a huge numbers game, it sounds like, whether you're waiting in between a filing again or how much you have to pay and what you're able to do.
Or if you avoid bankruptcy in the first place.
Or that's always great advice.
That is always great advice,
All right, so what's something else we might not know when it comes to bankruptcy?
Another concept that might seem odd to people is sometimes if you pay certain debts before you filed your bankruptcy or paid on them, that can be a bad thing. Those are called preferential payments. So what are these preference payments? If you paid an ordinary unsecured creditor, a medical bill, a credit card, a bank loan that had no collateral, and if you paid that creditor more than $600 during the 90-day period before your bankruptcy,
yep.
either in a lump sum, like you never putting pressure on you, and you
Yeah.
gave them $1,000, or you were making payments every month, sporadic payments of $300 here, $500 there.
Yeah.
Those are preferences. You've treated them better than everybody else. Now, if you have insider creditors, which are people that have a relationship with the person filing bankruptcy, a close one. Typically that's going to be family members, brothers, sisters, grandma, grandpa, mom, dad, your kids. Well, if you make any payments on a debt you owe to them within 12 months before you filed the bankruptcy, that's a preference. And it also would include like business partners. If you were in a corporation together or in a partnership, those would be insiders as well. Well, the consequences of doing those things is that the trustee of the bankruptcy court is going to seek to have that money returned, taken out of their pockets, brought back into the bankruptcy court, and they divide it amongst everybody.
Really?
And it's not normally a whole bunch of money, but the people that got to pay it over aren't typically pleased about it.
This is not, so if you've already defaulted paying back a loan to your sister, when they come and take the money back, the relationship might be a little bit strained.
Oh my goodness.
And so what happens is the trustee is going to write to the bank, to the doctor, to the brother, mom, say, we need that money back that shouldn't have been paid to you, and now we want it. And they try to exert pressure on those people to return the funds, which always isn't an easy thing to get because sometimes they don't have them.
And is that law that they have to return that?
The trustee can get an order of the court that just says those should be returned. I mean, that they weren't properly paid.
Right.
And, how it's an order of the court. Nobody goes to jail or anything if they don't pay it, but and a lot of times they don't collect it.
What a horrible thing to go to jail for, though, because you say, well, I loaned my brother this money. He paid me back. Now you want it back, but it's my money, and if I don't pay it, I go to jail. What about my brother?
I was going to say, well, now you're going to get bothered by the court and things like that. You keep mentioning the trustee.
So the real important thing of this is you got to watch this show so you know you don't pay these things, and if you're going to be filing bankruptcy, you don't do those things.
And we've talked about this before, of the lead up, because it takes 90 days to have something filed, and so what you need to do or not be doing during that time period. So it is important to watch this segment to know what's going on. You keep mentioning a trustee. Who is this person when a bankruptcy is filed?
So we talk about the trustee quite often, and it's not a judge. The trustee is essentially an administrator of the bankruptcy court, and so when you go to your legal proceeding, the meeting of creditors proceeding that we've talked about many times, this is the person that you go in front of. He asks you questions. He's there to ask you certain questions about the bankruptcy that you filed and about the information that you provided in it to make sure that everything's been done and disclosed properly. Now, one of their main goals besides asking these questions is to find out if there are any types of assets or where there is transfers of assets that can be brought back to the bankruptcy that can then be sold. So if you've got in your possession still assets that are not protected, not exempt, then the trustee can sell those and use that money, again, to disperse it amongst all the creditors. So they sort of perform an administrative function of the bankruptcy court. They aren't really the judge. They don't make the decisions. The judge of the bankruptcy court ultimately settles disputes that might arise.
Are they assigned by the court?
The court assigns the trustees. There's two of them that serve the Southern District of Iowa Central Division, which is here in Des Moines.
Okay.
These attorneys are both attorneys in private practice. This is basically a part-time gig. They have a law practice that they operate in as well, and so they can do these things a couple times a month. Okay. And so it can be somewhat time-consuming at times, but they've got other things to do as well. And so they kind of run things on a day-to-day basis through a person's case. But if there's an issue that they bring up between them and the person filing bankruptcy and the debtor's attorney, myself, ultimately the judge of the bankruptcy court then makes the decision how things are going to turn out.
Okay. Well, let's talk about these proceedings. This is something we've never touched on before. Is this something that happens like in, let's say, your office, or they're always assuming that this would happen in a court?
So, when you file your bankruptcy, you have to attend a legal proceeding, which we've spoken about many times, called the meeting of your creditors, and most of the time they don't come. So you're sitting in a room with your attorney and everybody else that's doing this and their attorney. And so this takes place at the Federal Building here downtown at 2nd and Walnut. And so it isn't the only one throughout Iowa. We have different districts in Iowa. So up like in Fort Dodge, which is in the Northern District, they conduct them, I think, at the library up there. And I think at Mason City, they conduct them at the post office building.
Really?
So they have to find various locations to conduct these things.
We did them in my backyard once. We had a swing set. It was great. Got a lot done.
It was probably more entertaining in your backyard, too.
Yeah.
So, I mean, these are kind of administrative proceedings. There's a lot less intimidation and pressure because you're not having to show up in a courtroom in a courthouse. So I think it's better for people to go in this environment. So they're already shook up the way it is when they go to this thing. So I think it's a good thing. Now, there is, in fact, a bankruptcy court as well. And that's where the big stuff's decided by the judge.
Okay.
And it's in a different building. So sometimes people get their buildings mixed up. They're going to the wrong places. The bankruptcy court is at 110 East Court Avenue across from the Des Moines Police Station. That's a pretty good location if things get out of hand. And that's where the judge decides things.
Okay. As we've been saying, this is a big numbers game, folks, and hopefully it's a numbers game that can be going in your direction, especially if you have someone that knows what they're talking about. We talk about it regularly here on our program, but Michael, if people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to do so? Well,
you can call me at 255-1855, and we'd be happy to answer your questions by the phone. You can find us on the web at www.iowa-bankruptcylaw.com, or you can follow us on Facebook.
Perfect. Thank you so much for joining us this morning and answering some questions we haven't necessarily talked about.
Not that we're anywhere near bankruptcy ourselves. No.
Hopefully not filing anytime soon, but still
never forget a debt.
keeping you informed nonetheless. All right, folks, you're watching CWI Live here on KCWI Channel 23. We will be right back.